My parents said I wasn't going anywhere in life and told me to move out. I didn't fight it. I packed my car and left that same day. 3 weeks later, my dad was on the phone asking why I suddenly stopped paying their bills. So last Tuesday, my dad looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Margot, you're 26 and you've got nothing to show for it." And I just stood there holding a bag of groceries I paid for, by the way, and thought, wow, this man really just said that to the person who's been keeping his lights on for 4 years. But here's the thing about me, I don't scream. I don't throw things. When I'm done, I'm just done. And that's exactly what happened. But let me back up so you understand how insane this whole situation was. I grew up in a small house in Dayton, Ohio. Me, my older brother Colton, my younger sister Bree, and my parents Dale and Cheryl. From the outside we looked normal. Maybe even nice. Inside, completely different story. My dad peaked in high school. Football, Letterman jacket, the whole thing. And ever since, he's been bitter that life didn't hand him anything after graduation. He bounced between warehouse jobs, a car dealership, some landscaping gig that lasted 3 months. My mom worked part-time at a salon for a while, then just stopped. Said her back hurt. Said she had anxiety. And look, I don't dismiss anyone's health issues, but this woman could spend 6 hours reorganizing Pinterest boards and couldn't fill out a single job application. You know the type, right? Now here's the sad part. I was always the quiet kid. Average grades didn't stand out. Colton was the athletic one. Bree was the baby everyone fawned over. I was just Margot. Middle child. Invisible. And my parents reminded me of that constantly. Colton got new cleats every season. Bree got dance lessons. I got hand-me-downs and a maybe next time, sweetie. But being invisible taught me something most people don't learn until way later. Taught me how to watch. How to plan. I started working at 16, bussing tables at a diner called Lucky's. Saved every dollar. By 18 I had a job at a logistics company doing data entry, and my boss Ruthann, absolute legend, started noticing me. More responsibilities, more trust. Within 2 years I was basically running the scheduling department. Now here's where it gets messy. Are you ready? When I was 20 my dad lost yet another job. Argument with a supervisor. Shocking. And my mom came to me, not Colton, not anyone else, and said, "Margot, we need help with the electric bill this month." Just this month. Do you think it was 1 month? Take a guess. First the electric. Then the water. Then the car payment. Then the mortgage. Bit by bit, I became the financial backbone of a household that treated me like I didn't exist. And the wildest part? No, thank you. No acknowledgement. It was just expected. Like I was an ATM that also lived in the spare bedroom. Colton eventually figured it out. Pulled me aside on the back porch and said, "Marge, you know this isn't right." I said, "Yeah, I know." He said, "So why are you still doing it?" I didn't have a good answer. I think part of me was hoping they'd finally see me. Finally appreciate me. Do you ever do that? Give and give, hoping somebody will notice? Tell me in the comments if you've been there. Bree noticed the dynamic too. One night she sat on my bed and said, "Why do mom and dad act like you owe them something?" I just shrugged. What was I supposed to say? Meanwhile, I kept getting promoted. Ruthann put me in a management training program and I crushed it. By 24 I was making more than both my parents combined ever earned in a year. And still handing over a chunk every month. Then came the moment that cracked something inside me. I'd been saving secretly in an account my parents didn't know about. Looking at apartments in Kettering close to work. I made the mistake of mentioning it at dinner. Just casually said, "I've been thinking about maybe getting my own place." You'd have thought I announced I was joining a cult. My mom stared at me like I'd insulted her personally. My dad laughed, not warm, mean, and said, "You? With what money?" My mom added, "Margot, be realistic. You're not exactly the type who figures things out on her own." Not exactly the type. My own mother. Colton's jaw clenched. Bree looked down at her plate. Nobody said a word. And I just sat there chewing, thinking. Planning. Because what none of them knew was that I'd already been approved for the apartment. Already signed the lease. Already had boxes packed in my closet. Do you think I told them? Not a chance. And what happened over the next few weeks, I still get chills. But I'll get to that. I started what I privately called the quiet exit. The next 2 weeks were business as usual on the surface. Work, home, cooking dinner on Tuesdays. But behind the scenes, I forwarded my mail to a P.O. box, changed my direct deposit to my private account, and packed 1 box a day, loading them into my trunk after everyone was asleep. And during all of this, not once did my parents ask how my day was. Not once did they notice my bookshelf emptying out. Because they didn't care. I was furniture that paid bills. Colton showed up at my door one night while I was wrapping photos and leaned against the doorframe. "You're really doing it, huh?" I nodded. He gave me this quiet, sad smile and said, "Good for you, Marge. About time." Bree found me loading a duffel bag into the car and teared up. She grabbed my hand and said, "Don't let them make you feel bad. You've done more for this family than they'll ever admit." That almost broke me. Almost. Then came the day. A Tuesday, my usual cooking night. I came home, walked past my parents, grabbed the last 2 boxes and carried them out the front door. My mom looked up. "What are you doing with those?" I said, "And honestly, I'm proud of this, moving. Like you told me to." She blinked. "What?" My dad muted the TV. "Dale does not mute the TV for anyone." I said, "You told me I wasn't going anywhere. You told me to be realistic. So I got my own apartment and I'm leaving." My dad said, "Well, good luck with that." Like I was bluffing. I loaded those boxes, got in my car and drove away. Didn't look back. Didn't cry until I was sitting on the floor of my empty apartment with a $5 pizza and a Sprite. But here's where it gets really interesting. Remember how I was paying their mortgage, electric, car insurance? All auto-pay from my bank account. The day I moved out, I canceled every single one. Do you think that was harsh? Honestly, I want to know. Drop it in the comments. Because when those bills started coming due and there was no Margot to cover them, my phone started ringing. A lot. The first call came 3 weeks later. My dad. He didn't call to check on me. Didn't call to apologize. He said, "Margot, why did the electric company send a shut-off notice?" Let that sink in. Not, "Are you safe?" Not, "Do you need anything?" Just, "Why aren't you paying our bills anymore?" And what I said back to him, "Oh, you're going to love this. But I'll save that for what's coming next because trust me, that conversation did not go the way he expected." So where were we? Right. My dad calling me 3 weeks after I moved out, not to check on me, not to say he missed me, but to ask why the electric company was threatening to shut off his power. The man really thought I was still going to bankroll his life from a different zip code. Incredible. So I'm sitting in my little apartment in Kettering, feet up on this secondhand coffee table I found for $12 at a yard sale, and my phone rings. I see Dad on the screen, and honestly, I almost didn't pick up. But curiosity got me. I wanted to hear what he'd say. "Margot, what's going on with the electric bill?" No hello. No how are you. Just straight to the money. And I said real calm, "I don't know, Dad. It's not my bill." Silence. Like 3 full seconds of silence. Then he goes, "What do you mean it's not your bill? You've been paying it." And I said, "Yeah. I was." Past tense. "I don't live there anymore, remember? You told me to be realistic, so I am. Realistically, your bills are your responsibility." You could hear him breathing. Just breathing. And then he said something that honestly still makes me laugh to this day. He said, "Well, your mother's very upset." My mother's upset. Not him. Never him. It's always your mother when things get uncomfortable. Classic Dale move. Do you have someone like that in your family? Someone who never owns anything directly? Tell me I'm not alone here. I said, "I'm sorry Mom's upset, but I've got my own rent to pay now. You guys will figure it out." And I hung up. Just like that. My hands were shaking a little, I'm not going to lie, but I felt something I hadn't felt in years. I felt free. Now you'd think that would have been a wake-up call for them, right? You'd think 2 grown adults would sit down and say, "Okay, we need to get jobs and handle our own finances." That's what normal people would do. But Dale and Cheryl are not normal people. Within a week, my mom started calling. Not me directly at first, she called Colton. And Colton told me everything because that's the kind of brother he is. She said things like, "Your sister abandoned us, and she's being selfish," and my personal favorite, "After everything we did for her. After everything they did for me. Can someone please tell me what exactly they did? Because I must have missed it between the hand-me-downs and being told I wasn't the type to figure things out." Colton shut her down every time. He'd say, "Mom, Margot paid your bills for 4 years. She doesn't owe you anything." And my mom would get all huffy and hang up. This happened probably 5 or 6 times in 2 weeks. Bree was getting it even worse. She was still living at home, remember, and suddenly the tension in that house was unbearable. She'd call me at night whispering from her bedroom like she was in some kind of spy movie. "Marge, it's bad. Dad's been yelling about the mortgage. Mom's been crying on the couch saying you ruined everything." And part of me felt guilty. I'm not going to pretend I didn't. Bree was stuck in the middle of their mess. But Bree also said something that stuck with me. She said, "They're not mad at you for leaving. They're mad because they can't survive without you and they know it." Pretty sharp for a 19-year-old, right? Meanwhile, my life was actually starting to come together for the first time. My apartment was tiny, like I could practically wash dishes and watch TV at the same time. But it was mine. I decorated it with stuff from thrift stores. I bought a little succulent and named him Gerald. Don't judge me. I was thriving, okay? At work, Ruth then pulled me into her office one morning and told me there was an opening for a regional coordinator position. Better pay, benefits, the whole package. She said, Margot, I'm recommending you. You've earned this. And I almost cried in her office, because that was maybe the first time in my adult life someone told me I earned something without following it up with a request for money. I applied. I interviewed. I got the job. And when I called Colton to tell him, he literally hooped so loud his neighbor knocked on the wall. Bree screamed on FaceTime. Those two were more excited about my promotion than my parents had ever been about anything I'd done in 26 years. But did I tell my parents? What do you think? Of course not. They hadn't earned that information. And honestly, sharing good news with people who only call when they need something is like pouring water into a bucket with no bottom. Pointless. Now here's where things started to escalate. About 6 weeks after I moved out, my dad shows up at my apartment. No warning. No call. Just shows up. I open the door and there he is, standing in the hallway looking like a man who'd just been told his truck got repossessed. Which, by the way, was about to actually happen because guess who'd been making those payments too? He walks in, looks around my place and says, and I will never forget this, this is what you left us for? This little box. This little box. My first real home. My sanctuary. And he called it a box. Do you think I kept my cool? Honestly, I tried. I really tried. I said, Dad, why are you here? And he sat down on my couch like he owned the place and said, we need to talk about the mortgage. The bank sent a letter. Not, nice place. Not, I'm proud of you. The mortgage. Always the money. I stood there looking at this man, my father, and I realized something that changed everything. He wasn't there because he loved me. He was there because I was useful. And the second I stopped being useful, I stopped existing to him. Have you ever had that realization about someone? Where you just see them clearly for the first time. It's like putting on glasses you didn't know you needed. I said, Dad, the mortgage is your name, your house, your problem. I'm 26. I have my own life now. You and Mom need to figure this out. He got quiet. Then he got angry. Started raising his voice about how family helps family, about how ungrateful I was, about how he didn't raise me to turn my back on them. And I just let him go. Let him burn through it all. When he was done, I said, are you finished? Because I have work in the morning. He left. Slammed my door so hard the wall shook. And I stood there in my little apartment in my little box, and you know what I did? I smiled. Because for the first time in my life I chose myself. And it felt terrifying and amazing at the same time. But things were about to get a lot worse before they got better. Because what my parents did next, the thing they pulled to try to force me back, I honestly didn't see it coming. And it involved Bree. Sweet, stuck in the middle Bree. And when I found out what they said to her, oh, that's when quiet Margot stopped being quiet. You're definitely going to want to hear how I handled that one. Because I didn't just stand up for myself this time, I went to war. Okay, so remember how I said my parents pulled something that involved Bree? Let me tell you exactly what happened, because even now, months later, it still makes my blood boil. About 2 months after I moved out, Bree called me. Not her usual late-night whisper call. This was the middle of the afternoon and she was full-on sobbing. I could barely understand her. I'm saying, Bree, slow down, what happened? And finally she gets it out. My parents told her she had to start paying what I used to pay. All of it. The electric, the water, the mortgage. Everything. Bree, who worked part-time at a bookstore making barely above minimum wage. They looked at their 19-year-old daughter and said, Margot's gone, so now it's your turn. Can you imagine? Can you actually imagine doing that to your own child? Like they just needed a new ATM and Bree was the next one in line. I was so angry I had to set my phone down for a second and just breathe. Do you think I let that slide? Not a chance. I told Bree, pack a bag. You're staying with me tonight. She said, Marge, I can't just leave. And I said, watch me come get you. And I did. I drove 30 minutes to Dayton, pulled into that driveway, and Bree was already sitting on the porch steps with a duffel bag. She looked so small. Like a kid again. It broke my heart. My mom came to the door as Bree was getting in the car. She yelled, where do you think you're taking her? And I said, calm as anything, somewhere she's treated like a daughter and not a paycheck. My mom's face went white. She didn't say another word. I drove away and didn't look back. Now my apartment was tiny, remember. Gerald the succulent barely had room. But Bree and I made it work. Air mattress in the living room, we split groceries, we fell into this little routine. And honestly, those first few weeks with Bree at my place were some of the best I'd had in years. We'd cook together, watch terrible reality TV, laugh about dumb stuff. Felt like having a real family for the first time. Colton was checking in on us constantly. He lived about an hour away in Columbus, had his own apartment and a decent job doing electrical work. He couldn't take Bree in because his place was a studio, but he drove down every weekend. The three of us would get takeout and just sit around my little living room talking. And not once, not a single time, did either of them ask me for money. You know what they asked me? how my new job was going, whether I liked my neighborhood, if I'd named any more plants. That's family. That right there. But back at my parents' house, things were falling apart fast. And I mean fast. Colton filled me in because he was still taking my mom's calls out of some kind of obligation. The mortgage was 2 months behind. The electric actually did get shut off for 3 days before my dad finally scraped together enough to turn it back on. Their car, the one I'd been making payments on, got repossessed. My dad had to borrow a neighbor's truck just to get to a job interview. Yeah, a job interview. Turns out when your lights get cut and your car disappears, suddenly your back doesn't hurt so much anymore. Funny how that works, right? My mom was apparently telling anyone who would listen that I was a terrible daughter. She called my Aunt Della, my dad's sister, and gave her this whole sob story about how I abandoned them. But Aunt Della? She's sharp. She called me directly and said, "Margot, honey, I heard your mom's version. Now tell me yours." So I did. I told her everything. 4 years of paying their bills, the comments, the dinner where they laughed at me, all of it. And Aunt Della said, "Sweetheart, you did the right thing. Those two have been coasting their whole lives and they finally hit a wall." Then she said something that really stuck with me. She said, "Sometimes the people who love you the most are the ones who let you fall so you learn to stand." Have you ever heard something at exactly the right time? Like the universe just handed you the exact words you needed? That was it for me. Now here's the part one didn't expect. About 3 months after I left, my dad got a job. A real one. Full-time at a distribution warehouse. Not glamorous but steady. And my mom, are you sitting down? My mom got a job too. Part-time receptionist at a dentist's office. I almost fell off my chair when Colton told me, "Cheryl, working? Voluntarily?" I thought surely the world was ending. But even with both of them working, they were buried. Months of missed payments don't just disappear. And the thing is, they still hadn't called me to apologize. My dad called once more about a month after his little visit to my apartment and it was the same thing. Money, bills, problems. I told him the same thing I told him before. "Not my responsibility, Dad." He hung up on me. And then the silence started. Weeks went by with nothing. No calls from Dad. No calls from Mom. Just quiet. And I'm not going to lie, the silence was almost harder than the yelling. Because at least when they were calling, I knew they remembered I existed. The silence made me wonder if they'd just written me off completely. Bree noticed I was getting in my head about it. One night she found me sitting on the kitchen floor at like midnight eating cereal straight from the box. "Don't judge me, we've all been there." And she sat down next to me and said, "You're thinking about them, aren't you?" I said, "I just don't understand how your own parents can go weeks without checking on you. Even just a text. Even just a, hey." And Bree said, "Because they're embarrassed, Marge. They know they messed up. They're just too proud to say it." You think she was right? Honestly, at the time I wasn't sure. Pride and cruelty look really similar from the outside. But then something happened that changed everything. It was a random Wednesday evening. I'd just gotten home from work, still in my coat, and my phone buzzed. It was a text from my mom. And all it said was, "I'm sorry." That's it. 2 words. No explanation. No excuses. Just, "I'm sorry." I stared at that text for probably 10 minutes. Bree was watching me from the couch and finally said, "What? What is it?" And I just turned the phone around and showed her. She read it and looked up at me and said, "What are you going to do?" And I honestly didn't know. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Part of me wanted to write back a whole essay about every single thing they'd put me through. And part of me, the little girl who used to just want her parents to see her, wanted to drive to Dayton and walk through that front door. I didn't respond that night. I needed time. But over the next few days more messages came. Not from my mom, from my dad. And these weren't about money. The first one said, "I know I wasn't fair to you." The second said, "Della told me some things I needed to hear." The third one, and this is the one that got me, said, "I'm proud of you, Margot. I should have said that a long time ago." I cried. Right there at my desk at work. Ruthin walked by and asked if I was okay and I just nodded because I couldn't talk. 4 years of paying their bills and nothing. But one text saying he was proud of me and I completely fell apart. Isn't that something? We don't want the money or the stuff. We just want to hear that our parents are proud of us. That's it. That's the whole thing. Colton called me that night and said, "Dad called me today. He sounded different, Marge. I think something actually shifted." And I said, "Do you think it's real?" And Colton, my honest, no-nonsense brother, said, "I think losing you scared him more than losing the house." So I did something I never thought I'd do. I called my dad. It was the hardest phone call of my life. Harder than any work presentation, any job interview, anything. My voice was shaking. And when he picked up, the first thing he said was, "Hey, sweetheart." He hadn't called me that since I was maybe 8 years old. We talked for over an hour. He told me that after the car got repossessed and the power got shut off, he sat in the dark kitchen and realized he'd spent years blaming the world for his problems and taking it out on the one person who was actually helping. He said my mom cried for 3 days straight when Bree left. Not because of the money, because the house was empty and quiet and they realized they'd pushed everyone away. He said, I don't expect you to forgive me right now. I just want you to know I see what I did. And I'm sorry. You know what I said? I said, Dad, I don't need you to be perfect. I just needed you to see me. And he said, I see you, Margot. I see you. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. Not overnight anyway. We started slow. Sunday phone calls. A dinner at a neutral restaurant, all 5 of us. Colton drove down from Columbus. Bree and I came together. My parents showed up looking nervous like they were meeting us for the first time. My mom hugged me and didn't let go for a really long time. My dad shook Colton's hand and then pulled him into a hug, which Colton told me later almost gave him a heart attack because Dale is not a hugger. Over the next few months things shifted. My parents kept working. They set up a real budget. Aunt Della actually helped them with that. They started a payment plan on the mortgage. They weren't perfect but they were trying. And honestly that was all I ever wanted. Bree eventually moved back home but on her terms. She told my parents straight up, I'll live here but I'm not paying your bills. I'm saving for my own future. And you know what? They respected it. My dad actually said, that's smart, Bree. You should. Colton started coming to family dinners once a month. And I did too. I drive from Kettering to that little house in Dayton, walk through the front door and it felt different. Not because the house changed, because the people in it did. Last Thanksgiving was the first one in years where we all sat at the same table and nobody yelled, nobody guilt anybody, nobody asked for money. My dad carved the turkey and made some corny joke about the stuffing. My mom actually cooked, like really cooked, not just reheated stuff. Bree set the table with these little name cards she made, which was adorable. And Colton brought a pie that he swore he baked himself but we're all 90% sure his girlfriend Tenley made it. After dinner my dad pulled me aside on the back porch. The same porch where Colton told me years ago that what was happening wasn't right. And my dad said, Margot, I wasted a lot of years being angry at the wrong things. You walking out that door was the best thing that ever happened to this family. And I'm sorry it took losing you to figure that out. I hugged him. And I meant it. Not the polite kind of hug. A real one. The kind where you feel like a kid again for just a second. So that's my story. The girl who was invisible, who paid for a family that didn't see her, who packed her car one Tuesday night and drove into a new life. And yeah, it was messy. And yeah, I did some things out of anger. And no, it wasn't perfect. But sometimes you have to let things break before they can be rebuilt into something better. If you've ever been the one in your family who gives and never gets seen, I see you. I really do. And I want you to know that choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. If you like this story, go ahead and hit that like button. It means more than you know. And if you didn't like something or you would have handled it differently, tell me in the comments. I'm genuinely curious. Would you have left? Would you have answered that first phone call? Would you have forgiven them? There's no wrong answer. We're all just figuring it out as we go. Thank you so much for watching and for listening to my story. You guys are the reason I can share this stuff without feeling crazy. I appreciate every single one of you. Take care of yourselves, okay? And remember, sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one holding everything together. Don't forget to check on them.